All right, everybody. Next up, we've got Rachel Presser, who is the founder of Sonic Toad Consulting and Media. Rachel makes sure that she's always busy. She's a developer, a writer, a business consultant, and film and TV producer. So there's never a dull moment, with that part. She's going to walk you through SBA funding and how you can, get a little bit of support through all this COVID mess. So with that, Rachel, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So as the title says, I'm going to explain how you can get SBA money to make video games. I'm mostly going to be focusing on COVID aid because that's kind of the more time-sensitive matter that we have to deal with. And it's, I think, also one of the most robust options if you're eligible for it. So yeah, for a little bit, about me, about Sonic Toad Consulting. I apologize if my screen's
Rachel, you're breaking up super
writing
bad.
a PDF to get this going. So Sonic Toad, does mostly business of games consulting. So if you're an indie developer who needs help, getting your business established, I don't really know what way you want to go. If you need help with loan grant applications, publisher pitches, I help out with that. Business education is obviously the big thing I do. I'm going to have an e-learning store coming hopefully by the end of 2021, maybe by 2022. And if you want to consult with me, you can check out my website or set something up at clarity.fm/Sonic And so without further ado, we're going to dive into how SBA funding works. So I should actually give you a little overview of the agency because a lot of people don't know what function the SBA actually has within the federal government. So it was an agency that was founded in the 1950s, and it was really designed to serve the needs of small employers, which the government officially defines as any business that has less than 500 employees, which that's a pretty wide berth because that covers literally 99% of American businesses. And when you have mostly indie developers are usually you're like me, you're a company of one, or you may be a company of just 2 or 3 people, so we're definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum here. And so that does cover a very wide array of companies. But the SBA was basically designed to meet our needs instead of the mega conglomerates that buy a lot of our leaders. And so one of the other main purposes of the SBA is that it helps assign prime federal government contracts to small businesses, which I'm going to dive into government contracting a little. Because that could be a whole other presentation in and of itself. But some game devs are becoming government contractors. I was briefly a government contractor a bit, so I'm going to explain how some of that works. But so that's basically the prime directive of the SBA. And so the way that it's set up is that it has about a little over 3,000 employees, about 20 divisions, and so it has a lot of different divisions, different ways that you can get money, to help grow your business, read money to make a game, and so there's the lending programs, there's business grants, government contracting, which I mentioned, and then they also have a lot of programs designed specially for business development within specific communities. They especially want to focus on marginalized groups. They have the 8A business development program, which is an incubator of sorts. It helps match you with mentors and resources within your community, mainly if you are a woman and or minority business owner, and if you have a net worth that's less than $250,000, which I think is most people these days. But that's one specific program they have. They also have a lot of different programs if you are a veteran and you're looking to start a business of some type. That's also an option that may be available to you and your team. And then SCORE is another excellent resource for free business help. SCORE stands for the Society of Retired Executives. You have people from all types of industries, who led all kinds of businesses, and they they give back, to their communities and the next generation of entrepreneurs. They can help you with everything from, like business and industrial advice to like going over your business plans. If you have questions about things like, applying for loans, grants, some federal contracts, like anything of that sort, SCORE can really be an excellent resource. So I thought it was worth mentioning. And then, your regional SBA office, is where things can really vary because there's at least one SBA office in every state, depending on where you live and or have your company set up. There may be more, depending on population, like the specific economic development needs. Like I'm up here in New York City. We have a couple, for SBA because obviously like the downstate region has very different like economic development needs than upstate New York does. But it's a very densely populated area, so they need to have like more SBA staff here opposed to say like Alaska where they only have one office for the entire state. And so it's always a good idea to check with your local SBA office like for specific grants and other programs, because there's often a lot of region specific programs that are not always going to be, available on like a blanket federal basis. So you should definitely check with your local SBA office to see, if there's any like economic development grants that you may apply for that may only be available like in your state or in your county or even zip code. You never know. So there's, it's a free resource to check out. It's definitely something I would recommend looking into. Definitely check that out. And so if you're wondering why I started the lending entry up above, it's because technically the SBA is actually not a lender, which the disaster loans, the EIDL loans, which I'm going to dive into soon, they are like the only loan you can get directly through the SBA. The rest of those loans have to go through, a bank or some kind of intermediary. The way that most SBA lending programs work, the two which game devs are most likely to consider would be the 7A program and then the microloan program, is that the SBA acts as a guarantor for those loans. Like they will guarantee up to 90%, of the loan balance under these particular programs. And I said, but technically the SBA is not a lender. So if you are going to get an EIDL loan, I said, which we're going to dive into soon, if you are going to get one, because the SBA is not a lender, that means that it's not going to show up in your credit report, which is an important factor to consider, if you're going to be considering getting one of these loans. It doesn't actually show up because, SBA is not a bank, but there's still other considerations which we're going to dive into. And so another like free tool, it's called the SBA Lender Match, which this varies by region. But if you're looking, to get matched with a lender, whether you're looking for, a 7A loan, microloan, alternative capital, or if like you haven't applied for PPP yet and every place you're trying is busy, Lender Match could be an option for you. It's a free automated matchmaker. You just basically it's kind of like filling out like a dating profile. You put in stuff about your company, how much you're looking to get, what you need the money for, when you would like the money, and then basically you fill this out, you submit it. It's free to do so, and then if you don't get any matches, you can just keep resubmitting or create a new request. And like I said, varies by region because some lenders are kind of overwhelmed with applications. Others may not be getting that much. So it doesn't hurt to give Lender Match a shot, if you're interested in borrowing money. So about that, the 7A and micro programs, you're thinking like, well, if I'm going to have to go, to a bank, like why would I bother with all this SBA paperwork? So it's ultimately up to you. It's just that the reason why this program persists is because, like I said, the SBA guarantees the loan. The lender may be a bit more amenable to working with you. I said, this is especially if you're seeking out government contracts, but even if you're not, yeah, it can still be a good fit, like if you don't have a lot of experience and if you don't have a lot of collateral, but that application is uphill. I mean, I think that checklist they give you is enormous, which is just to provide a little overview if you're thinking about going the 7A route. Yeah, you have to provide extensive, information about your personal history. And I put a star there, yeah, because it wants to know business and criminal history. I mean, I don't think you're completely dead in the water, if you do have a felony conviction, but there's certain ones that they kind of do look down upon, which we're going to revisit this when I go over disaster loans, because with the American Rescue Plan, they were trying to make, more SBA options available to, to people in marginalized communities who are more likely to have, felony convictions for things they maybe shouldn't have gotten that for. But for 7A, I think that some of that is still in place. And so, yeah, if you're going to go the 7A route, you have to provide a lot of information about, like what you've done, in terms of jobs, like why would you be qualified to run a business? If you are making money, how much have you been making thus far? Which I know that puts game devs at a big disadvantage, because we tend to have a pretty lopsided cash flow, especially in the beginning, especially if you haven't gotten your first title out yet. And like I said, collateral is not required, but it certainly helps. And one thing that hurts us is that, game devs tend not to be a very capital intensive business. It's not like, say you're opening a restaurant, like you may have equipment that has a title attached to it, or vehicles, that may have a title. That is one thing that does hurt us and kind of makes us more difficult, to get lending if you're looking to go this route. And yeah, that third one, SBA wants to see you're making jobs with these loans. So yeah, they'd rather have you create 1 or 2 minimum wage jobs, than pay an artist or a programmer on a freelance basis very well. It's unfair, but it is what it is. But if you are thinking, of going this route, that is something that they do look at. And so when I looked up data on who actually gets 7A loans, what I found out is that the average SBA-backed startup loan is a 10-year loan at, that's being lent at 6%. Although, the term varies, but this is just the most common term for this kind of loan. And you're going to see, that economic injury disaster loan has a way better term than this if you're eligible. So, grant programs. This is one that game developers are more likely to qualify for, namely because of those 2 programs I have mentioned here, which would be the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program and Small Business Technology Transfer. And then separate of the SBA, you may also want to consider National Science Foundation grants, depending on the kind of technology you're working with or the kind of organizations that you may be partnering with. These are all very viable options if you're thinking of getting grant funding. And got to hammer home again, check with your regional SBA office for any region-specific grants, because you never know, which specific states or counties that they may be trying to increase technology investments, and therefore they're trying to attract game developers, to come and, have open an office on the premises and go work on some really cool AR project, and you just might be able to get, the STTR or Small Business Innovation Research funding for that. And so if you want to check out any specific openings for this kind of funding, you can check out sbir.gov/funding, and this page is constantly evolving, so check it out, look up what types of technology initiatives are currently accepting proposals. And then if you also need to find a partner organization, the Games for Change Festival and following them on social media is a great way to meet potential partner organizations, especially if you're looking, to create games for some kind of specific cause, or if you're thinking of advancing scientific or medical research with your work, it's a wonderful option. So yeah, so if you're thinking about going this route, SBIR.gov is where you get started. And then one of the lesser known ways of getting federal money is through the SBA awards program. So awards are a little bit different than grants. They're basically like a federal award is a legal instrument where you do get money from a federal government agency, whether it's going to be in financial assistance or like specific like cost reimbursement, like that would be like, say, reimbursing your development costs or like your office rent if you're going to like relocate. And then there's specific covenants within that award agreement that you have to like follow through. I mean, grants are going to have their terms as well, but like awards kind of have more strings attached. Like I said, it's not as well known as the grant programs I mentioned, but this may be an option depending on where you live. And so some of the best known federal awards programs, majority of them are for veterans. So if you or somebody on your development team who also owns the company is a veteran, you should definitely look into these programs because they're not very like well known. They're not really like talked about that much, and it's something that might be able to help you. So it's like the two most well known federal awards programs would be Boots to Business, which does grant you like 5 years of mentoring and some financial support if you have a veteran-owned business. There's also the Service Disabled Veteran Entrepreneurship Training Program. So if you have a service-connected disability or other injury, you may be able to get additional help for this program. And then you have the FAST program, the Federal and State Technology Program, which is basically what oversees those two grants I was just talking about. But they sometimes have additional federal awards, which may be able to help you. So it's definitely worth checking out, trying to make some contacts with these agencies. And like I said, if you or anyone on your dev team is a veteran, you may be able to qualify for additional aid under these programs. And so becoming a government contractor is another option that you may have. So I'm not going to focus on this a whole lot because this could be like a whole other presentation in and of itself. And I really want to focus on that other, disaster aid coming up. So if you want to consider government contracting, I mean, obviously you're going to have a very reliable and reputable client. You don't have to worry about the government not paying that invoice, unlike what happens with some publishing companies, where you just send that thing into the ether. I mean, no, they're going to pay your bills. You can get good rates, and they'll pay them. And so if you're thinking of maybe providing game dev services, or maybe some kind of QA service, or maybe you want to supply one of your departments with gaming chairs or something, this is an option to consider. And the SBA is there to help you in the bidding process, which can be time-consuming and expensive, but it's something to consider if the private sector is not cutting it. And there's a registration process you can go through to certify as woman, minority, and/or veteran-owned business, which does help jump you in the queue a bit to get these government contracts, because they do want to see people in underrepresented groups, succeed and have some kind of be able to close the racial and gender wealth gaps, and a federal contract is a wonderful way to do that. So this is something else to consider. And okay, so we're about to dive into the disaster loan program and all that lovely stuff. And so I just want to explain some of the differences though between all these standard SBA programs I just covered, and what makes COVID aid specifically different is that, like I said at the very beginning, SBA has about 20 different divisions, and it has one specially for disasters. So you're not going through the loan department. You're not going through business development. This is specifically appropriated disaster aid. And so because it's disaster aid, it gets a couple different considerations under federal law. And the prime one is that this does not preclude you from getting other government help on the state level or the federal level. It doesn't preclude you from applying to other SBA programs. So like if you're going for certain grants, like if you did get like a technology transfer grant, you could also get an EIDL loan. It's not going to disqualify you. The only exception is if you are a government contractor and if you're working on certain federal contracts, then that could prevent it. But otherwise, no, I mean, you can apply for all these things. It's there for the taking. Make games, not war. Go for it. And so the other thing about the disaster loans is that, like I said, so if you're going to go for EIDL, that is going to come directly from the SBA. If you're going to go for PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, that does get administered through the bank. And so I'm going to discuss PPP first because the deadline for that is more imminent. Although at the time of this presentation, there's currently a package waiting in the Senate to extend the PPP deadline yet again, also have more funds appropriated, and then I'm also going to explain the formula change. So if you want to see all this stuff happen, go call your senators. But with that said, assuming there's no changes, the deadline to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program is May 31st. And if you are a first draw applicant, meaning that you did not get PPP in 2020, you're given priority over people going for a second draw loan. And now this third one's very important because as you're aware, a lot of people, were really confused when these programs rolled out. And you're still confused now, probably. And I don't blame you because there's been a lot of buzz in the media. A lot of things changed at the absolute last minute. I do this stuff for a living. I had a hard time, keeping up with it. And there's still changes yet to come. So I don't blame you for being confused with this. But because of the wording in a lot of articles, and even wording directly from the government, a lot of people, for a lot of indie developers in particular, who tend to be non-employers, meaning that it's just you, maybe just you and like one or two other owners, and you're not employees, you don't have employees. A lot of people assumed that they weren't going to qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program, but you do. You don't need to have employees in order to get this money. And if you're going to go for the economic injury disaster loan, you can get both at the same time. I personally have for both 2020 and 2021. There are ways to do it. And so, as I mentioned before, PPP is administered through banks and like alternative lenders. You can't get directly from the SBA. But if you're trying to hit up your local bank or some of the more popular online lenders like Bluevine or Biz2 Credit, I know those are like the two that were at the top of the heap, these past 2 years. Lender Match can help you find a lender, if like every place you're looking is not accepting new PPP applications. But the one caveat with that is that you had to be very careful on your application because they're only going to give you one chance to apply. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So in order to be eligible for PPP, it's a lot looser than it is for EIDL. Your business must have been existing, by the time COVID took place. But under the new rules, like I mentioned, business and freelancers who have felony convictions, you can get the funding now. Before it was not allowed. And just so long as you have 500 or fewer employees, you're good to go. So if it's just you, you're totally fine. And so for the terms of getting PPP money is that you're it's based on your 2019 revenue up to $100,000. You divide that by 12, multiply it by 2.5 if it's just you, if you're just self-employed, or if you do have employees, it's up to 2.5 times your monthly payroll costs, and then you can get a PPP loan up to $10 million. These loans are specifically designed for keeping people on your payroll, or if it's just you. It's designed to actually replace income that you lost. And so, unlike economic injury disaster loans, you can basically give all of your PPP money to yourself, and that's called owner compensation replacement, which is basically, like a tax-free grant that gets forgiven. Because we're going to explain PPP forgiveness momentarily. And so, there was an old formula if you got a first draw loan last year, where it was based on your profit, not your revenue. And that screwed a lot of self-employed people who have a lot of expenses. That's definitely game devs. You have a lot of expenses and that can eat up like all or most of your income. And so the SBA, they haven't issued guidance whether they're going to like retroactively issue funds if you did get one of these loans and then you applied before the rules changed. Once again, call your senators if you're like, hey, where's the rest of my PPP? Why are you punishing me for applying early? Because that's being considered in the package currently, sitting in the Senate. And so you can have other types of income, so if you're doing, like game making on the side and like you have a day job, you can still apply for PPP. You can have other types of income, but only one business is used if you do have multiple businesses. And when you're applying for this, you need to show your business tax return, just your Schedule C, if you're a freelancer or a sole proprietor. And so for the actual terms of PPP loans, if it's not going to be forgiven, you only have a 1% interest rate. There's no prepayment if you're going to pay it back early. It's a 5-year term. You get 6 months from the date of disbursement before you have to start paying it back. And then under the old rules, if you did get an EIDL advance, which is a type of grant with a confusing name, if you did get EIDL advance, that was supposed to reduce the forgivable portion, but now those loans have been totally forgiven now that the rules have changed. And so if you want to get this thing forgiven, which you can if you actually just pay it to yourself and just call it owner compensation replacement if you don't have employees, it's 100% forgivable. It's totally free money, so you should absolutely go get it if you can find a lender still taking them. And then, but if you want to use it for for other things, you can. So if you do want to get a PPP loan and use it for game making, you totally can. It's just not going to be forgiven. But if you have other business expenses you would like to use it on, up to 40% will be forgiven. If you use it on like rent or business mortgage interest plus utilities. The only caveat is you cannot use PPP and EIDL for the same exact expenses. So if you're using PPP to pay like office rent or like co-working space rent, you can't use EIDL for the same purpose. Oh no, what does it do? Yeah, I'm sorry. This thing is running so slow. Just get the whole slide. Yeah, so if you also got a second draw PPP loan, it works pretty much the same as the first draw, except that you have to prove that that you had a revenue loss of at least 25% across any fiscal quarter between 2019 to 2020, meaning that, so let's say you were making pretty good money from January through March in 2019, but then January through March 2020 was doing horribly, then you can use that to help get forgiveness. And and so even if you can't substantiate that loss, you can still get the loan, but you may have a harder time getting it forgiven in that case. And so the PPP coverage period, there's the 8-week period and the 24-week period, meaning that if you are going to get an EIDL loan as well, they cannot cross beams in this particular time frame. But if you're paying all that money to yourself, you're good. You don't have to worry about the beams crossing, so to speak. And so now here's what the real focal point is: the economic injury disaster loan, because these things are honestly fantastic for game devs, which I'm going to dive into why. And you have until December 31st to apply for them. So long as you have been in business as of February 15, 2020, you can apply for it. Even if you don't have any employees, you can apply no matter how much you've made. Yeah, you can totally apply. And while these loans are not forgivable, they still have excellent terms that make them great for game making. So IO's a little more flexible with what they allow than PPP, and so the main thing that they want to have covered is what's known as working capital, which in accounting terminology, working capital is basically, the net of what you owe in the short term versus the cash and other resources available to you right now. So that would basically be everything you need just to keep, the business running. So that would be website expenses, if you're paying office rent, professional services like accountants, attorneys, and business consultants. You can use it also to pay off debt, but only your monthly payments. You're not allowed to refinance debt. So if you racked up a big credit card balance for business reasons, you can't use your idle proceeds, just pay the whole thing off in one fell swoop. They won't allow that. But if you gradually pay it down, you'll just make your payments on it. They do allow you to use it for that. And so what makes idle interesting is that while you couldn't use PPP to pay freelancers and have it forgiven, idle you can use to pay freelancers, which I know for a lot of game devs that is the majority of our dev cost, which is why these ones are very good fit for us. And so for what you can't use idle for is that, so like I said, you can't use it to refinance old debts. You can't use it for expansion. So that would mean opening another office or hiring a new employee. You can't buy equipment with it. So if you're looking to, use this time to buy a new computer, don't use your idle money for it. If you're relocating a business, you can't use it for that. No paying dividends and bonuses, nothing to the owners. So when I was looking at the language in the loan agreement, it did say no payments to owners except when directly related to performing services, which, that's kind of a legal gray area. I would still avoid giving yourself that money unless you really have no choice. And then weirdly enough, you can't use it to repair damages, which I thought was strange, for a disaster loan. But yeah, you can't use it for if your computer gets damaged in a hurricane or something. You can't use it for it. And so the idle advance is a confusingly named cash grant. This is actually the closest you're going to get to totally free money. And that in 2020, they gave out these grants of up to $1,000 per employee with a $10,000 maximum, for 10 employees. And so being a business of one, I got $1,000 on this last year. And so I'm okay, not gonna laugh at $1,000. I'll take it. And it's the same kind of restrictions on the idle loan in terms of what you can use these for. The only difference is you don't have to pay it back. But then in 2021, it got interesting, really interesting, because they did something called the targeted idle advance, where it was an invite-only grant, for borrowers who already had idle loans, and it awarded the difference all the way up to the $10,000 amount I mentioned. And I mentioned this because I'm totally floored that the SBA just gave me $9,000. This was on top of the loan I got. I was like, oh, there has to be a mistake. I'm like, I don't have employees. But then the representative I spoke to said, oh, no, they said, no, woman business owner, low-income area, you get that. Yeah, you get that $9,000 because I was able to demonstrate a 30% revenue reduction across the third quarter, which I only got because I already had all that funding last year and was not really taking on a lot of clients as a result, focusing on the game. And now they're just throwing more money at me. I'm not going to complain about that. So, yeah, if you did take out an idle loan last if you're in what the SBA considers a low income region, you may get this targeted EIDL advance invite. Go get it, because you might be able to get up to like another like $8,000-9,000 depending on what you received last year. However, if you didn't get the invite, you're not going to get it. You can't like apply for this. But yeah, so if you got that target EIDL advance, that's what this is, and you don't have to pay it back, which is even more awesome. But now, if you do qualify for an EIDL loan, you may be wondering, like, wow, like I'm qualifying for a lot. How much, should I take out? Like approximate to my business needs, and like getting the game out. Like, how much should you take out? So, the terms of an EIDL loan, which is like you're not going to get terms this great at a bank. Trust you're just not. It's a 3.75% interest rate with a 30-year term, and you get up to 2 years from your disbursement date to pay it back. Yet no bank is going to give that to you. No, none of them will. And while interest is going to accrue on it, the SBA still is going to tell you what your monthly payment is before you agree to sign off on this loan. So you can be well aware of like how much it's going to be. You can also go to bankrate.com or just like pull up like an Excel template and like run what's called an amortization schedule. That should also give you an idea of like what your monthly payment would be, depending on how much they're going to allow you to take out versus like what you think you'd be comfortable having, what you can pay back. And if you want to pay the whole thing off one shot, there's no penalty for paying it off early. And so you can borrow up to $500,000. I know, which is wild, really wild. It was the old limit was $150,000, but now it's $500,000. And the formulation is very simple. They now just let you borrow up to twice your 2019 revenue, regardless of your head count, regardless of like where you're located. It's just whatever like your revenue was in 2019. It's they'll let you borrow up to twice that amount. So as for like what they go, how much you like to borrow, you have like three basic tiers. You have the unsecured loan, the secured loan, and then like the huge one that requires a personal guarantee. So this is the simplest approach. If you want to go with the unsecured loan, this would be the most expedited option you have. This is for if you're going to borrow $25,000 or less. You don't need to provide collateral. You don't need to have insurance for this loan. It's all pretty simplified. And so to get like $20,000 to $25,000 is definitely nothing to sneeze at. It's definitely a nice amount of money to make a game. Very low monthly payment, long deferral. So it is something you may want to consider. Now, if you want to go for more, it gets a little more complicated. And I'm using some of my personal experience with my loan modification package here to guide you through this. If you're going to borrow more than $25,000 but less than $200,000, you do have to go through a little more hoop jumping in order to get this loan. And that you need to have this UCC1 lien filed against your business, and then you also need to get hazard insurance. Now, these two things are not as scary as they sound. I know it sounds like frightening at first, but it's actually really not that bad. What that UCC lien does is that it does give the federal government an interest, in your business assets. Hey, they're giving you a lot of money. They want you to pay it back. So this is basically like them insuring themselves against default. And then that $100 lien filing fee just comes out of what they were going to give you for the loan. So if you were going to get like a $50,000 loan, for instance, like then you're going to see $49,900 show up in the bank. They just subtract that lien fee from the balance. And then in order to get cleared by the SBA's legal department, you need to get hazard insurance, which it's not quite what it sounds like, because when I heard hazard insurance, I was just, oh, does this mean I have to get something against like flash floods or something, or like or something like somebody getting hurt in my home office? Like, how does that work? So I found an insurance broker who specialized in getting the exact kind of coverage that SBA borrowers were looking for. And basically, what it comes down to is you must have what's called BPP coverage in your declaration page. That basically stands for business and personal property coverage. And so if it's just you working at a home, this type of insurance is actually not that much. Like my premium is about about $580 for the whole year. They're charging me $48 a month here in New York City, maybe more or less depending on where you're located, and how many more people you may have in your studio. But it's really not that expensive. And then, like I said, I did the math and I'm like, hey, if I have to pay, like a little less than $600 to get like $60,000, I'm gonna go for it. So, these brokers want to help you. They want to sell you the insurance. They'll get you all the right certificates you need to go get that taken care of. And so, the guaranteed loan is when you really want to reach for the stars, and just take out like the biggest loan you possibly can. You do need to provide a personal guarantee. So it's the same things as above. You're going to have that UCC 1 lien. You got to get the hazard insurance. It's probably going to run you more for a loan that size, because what the hazard insurance does is it is basically insuring that loan basically. But then you do also have to guarantee your personal assets. That's if you're going to borrow $200,000 or more. I don't know if you really want to take a risk on an amount that big, for making a game, but sky's the limit. If you can get it, it doesn't hurt going for it. Now, then there's something called reconsideration process. Because this is where it gets, I know, confusing for a lot of people. And that while PPP runs in rounds, there's first draw and second draw. You don't get multiple EIDL loans for the same business. It doesn't work that way. The way that it works is that you have to go through something called the reconsideration process, which is kind of like loan modification, but it's based on that amount that they told you were eligible to borrow. So you can borrow up to your limit. So let's say that they did tell you were eligible to borrow $50,000, but you only took out $20,000. But then, you change your mind, scope gets bigger, you got bills to pay. And so, I'm sorry, what's we doing? Okay. You got bills to pay. You want to get more money. So what you have to do is that you have to email this pdcrecons@sba.gov address. You put your business name and your application number in the subject line with reconsideration. And then you tell them that you want to start the loan increase process. So this was automated. If you got an EIDL loan last year, they automatically, invited all the borrowers to come back once the formula changed. But assuming that we're not going to have that again, or if you've already, gone through this process, you do have to manually reach out to them in order to start the reconsideration process. And so, so basically the way it works is that, if you were not, notified by an SBA loan officer, to modify your loan under the new appropriations set by the American Rescue Plan, then you do need to manually reach out to PDC Recons and tell them why you need more money. And because I actually did get the reconsideration process started back in December and then I wound up not having to do it because they reached out to me. But if you want to get the reconsideration process rolling, they will accept vendor payments to keep project on schedule when you really just want to get this game released at some point. That's what they'll accept. So that's what you tell them. If you have one of these loans and you want to borrow more, up to your limit, this is what you tell them in order to keep getting it, to make games. And now, as for the worst case scenario, as for what happens if you default on an EIDL loan, because keep in mind you can't get them forgiven. So if you don't pay and your business shutters, like I mentioned, that UCC 1 lien, it gives the government an interest, in your business assets, meaning that like they could take your computer, they could take anything else that's considered business property like furniture, and then they can also put a lien against any future income you have coming in, like your game royalties or like any advertising fees. If you do consulting, they could put a lien on that income. They can also go after your personal assets, like even if you do have like an LLC or a corporation in place. They can go after your personal assets if your business assets like did not take care of the defaulted amount. And if you have tax refunds, they can also be seized to pay the balance down. Like they'll do what they have to do to go get that money. So that is like the scary worst case scenario if you default on EIDL. Although because the payments are like relatively low, you get a very long deferral on it. I don't think you're going to have to worry about this too much. But the term's long. You never know when life can throw you a curveball. So this is just information you should be aware of to make an informed choice if this is the right loan for you. And now if you want to know how you can take a look at like how much you owe, how much interest has accrued, you need to create an account with something called the Capital Access Financial System, which you can get to at caweb.sba.gov. It's like kind of a pain to make an account there, but they have lovely systems admins who are super patient if you keep getting iced out of it, like what happened to me when I was making this. That's where you would go in order to find get a nice bird's eye view of like basically every SBA loan that you have. Because like I was able to see like my forgiven PPP loan, my outstanding one. I saw like my EIDL balance all in one place. Because you're going to need this for tax purposes when you do start making payments. You have to figure out how much is going to interest and how much is going to principal. So it's definitely a good idea to have access to this information easily. And then if you want to make payments, you can send the government a check, but it's just easier to make an account at pay.gov so you can log in, see your payment history. It's all there in one place, and just makes your life a bit easier. So yay! Thanks for coming. I really hope that more people can get all this lovely government money to make video games, because they don't really care what you do with it. Just as long as you're within that working capital restriction, as long as you pay it back, you're good to go. You can make your game as like big and crazy and controversial as you want. Government don't care. They just want to see that you're getting the money, that you're redistributing it, to your development team, anyone else that who you're paying to work on the game, and you just tell PDC Recons you need it for a vendor payment, when you really just mean, by God, I want to get this thing released. And yeah, that's how you do it.
Right.
Yay.
And you know what? And like the PPP thing you're talking about, like if you are scared of the PPP stuff and you can't do the paperwork, you need to work on some of your business skills, right?
Yeah, and shameless plug, that's why we have consultants like me to help guide you through this. So
right, for sure. And then, but I mean, like I did mine, right? I did both rounds, right? And I was like, wow, that was not as hard. It's like doing taxes. You're like, oh God, the taxes, and you worry about it for months, but then you sit down and you do it, and you're like, well, that wasn't really that hard. Even though I was disorganized, it wasn't that hard. So let's hit some questions. Here we go. Yeah. Lucas Game says, so is PPP COVID specific?
Yes. Because I said this is that PPP is administered through the disaster department. So this only comes up in like major federal disasters like COVID.
And this one specifically right now is COVID specific. There have been other PPPs though.
Yeah. Yes, it's same for EIDL. So you just don't hear about it that much, because it may be this like like one like localized disaster, like a big hurricane, or something, and people want to get an EIDL loan to like build back a restaurant that got like trashed in a hurricane or something. But because like hundreds and millions of people have been affected by COVID, it's been a whole other animal. And so this is a COVID specific program, and it's got a very short deadline. So if you want that deadline to be extended, go bug your senators. Especially if I said if you're like me and you got scared into applying early for that second draw, and then I'm like, oh my god, I could have gotten so much more money had I waited, but didn't know that. Bug your senators because they're trying to get
I could have got more money. That makes me mad. But it is what it is. That money that we got was like perfect timing, and it helped us out.
Yeah, my dude, bug your senators because they're gonna get you that extra money. They're gonna get you that that extra amount that we're due. So, yeah.
And you don't have to have like an LLC. You can be a sole proprietor and still get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
As long as you're a Schedule C filer, you're good to go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. What would you recommend for just one person business? Like, what are some good options that were presented in the talk?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would definitely recommend EIDL if you're looking, to build out your game. As like EIDL is a wonderful fit for game developers because of that very long repayment period and deferral. PPP also, if you can get that for yourself because you distribute that to yourself as an owner compensation replacement, and that pays your bills while you're working on the game.
Right.
EIDL takes care of the biz expenses, but then PPP takes care of you personally. So yeah.
Lucas Game says, is there a YouTube tutorial on how to run a business? They have that for coding and art. So why not entrepreneurship? Well, you know what? We have the Indie Game Business Show. There's like 200 and plus episodes, and we live stream every week, and we have conferences. We're going to come up on our 9th conference here. That is a business networking conference. But Indie Game Business is specifically about running your indie gaming business, whether that be game developer or whatever. And we talk about all different aspects. Rachel has come on the show multiple times.
Yep.
Yeah. And I love your new logo. Your little frog. It's different.
Oh, I've had that logo forever.
That one? Oh, well, because the one you used before, I think was different.
Oh, you're right.
More money is greater than less money. It depends.
Well, it
depends on what you need.
Is that money? That's also the thing. Is it going to be money you have to pay back versus that lovely free $9,000 gift I got just by sole virtue of staying in the Bronx forever? I mean, because that Target EIDL Advanced thing, it didn't matter how much you make or what your net worth is. They just wanted to see, oh, you're in a low income area. Okay, here you go, free money. Take it. Cool.
Take it. Cool. Take this money. Yeah. So the question was that I think I missed. He was clarifying. So a loan being forgiven means you're not required to pay it back, correct? Yes. That's exactly what it means. Or, you know what, with the first PPP, it was like even if it wasn't forgiven, it was like 1% interest.
Yeah, just 1%.
1%. You cannot get that at all. You cannot get 1% interest loan.
No.
Oh, Angel Star Studios, IGB is great. Lots of good information.
Yep.
Rachel always has amazing information as well.
Well, thank you.
Any questions about any aspects of the gaming industry, make sure and hit up Rachel. So what's your website? Is it on the closing page here? Whoops.
Actually, I put it towards the beginning. It's like the second or third page. Let me go back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just sonictoad.com.
Sonictoad.com.
Yep, sonictoad.com. Clarity.fm/sonictoad. What is this thing doing? I'm sorry. Oh my god, my Chromebook is just like running so slow.
Because it's a Chromebook.
Normally it ran like really fast, but I've had to basically like de-ice this thing because I took it out all the time. In the before time, in the pandemic, it's just sat in a cabinet. Yeah, no. Normally,
what I was cleaning because we're moving, right? And I'm like, this is a tablet, and then I put it away, and then I thought about it. I'm all, that's a freaking iPad. That I haven't been using. Yeah, so there you go, Sonic Toad. Also, before we get out of here, thank you so much for this. Was an amazing talk as always, Rachel.
Thank you.
I am always happy to hear your information, but I am supposed to announce the art contest winners. Yay! So, and there's a lot of them. So the contest winners, the best in show for student 2D art was Agarica Promo Art, Anna Hart, and student number 7. The People's Choice for 2D art was Agarica Promo Art, Anna Hart, and student number 7. The best in show for student 3D art was Mushroom House Diorama, Denise Sanchez, and student number 1. And People's Choice voted that too. The exact same order. Best in show for student photogrammetry was An Old Future, Anthony Parisi, and student number 2. The People's Choice, they voted the exact same as well. So the best in show for professional 2D art was Mushroom House Diorama, Alina Gottbrecht, and professional number 2. The People's Choice, on the other hand, was Autumn Stream, Ryan Grady, and professional number 3. The best in show for professional 3D art was Staying Safe, Daniel Gallagher, and professional number 1. People's Choice for professional 3D art was Makarov Handgun. That's a badass name. Thomas Hopfer, and professional number 2. And the best in show in professional photogrammetry was Saul Statue, Amber Johnson, and professional number 1. And we are going to post in the art showcase info channel as well. So yes, thank you so much, Rachel. We have another talk coming up. Who do we have next? Let me get over here and look. We have Robin Coleman, Intergenerational Game Design, the Evolving Older Adult Gamer. And that is up in just a few minutes. So thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
If you have any other questions, come on over to the Discord. And are you going to be in the Discord?
It's easier just to hit me up on my website or on Twitter. But yeah. Thanks for having me. And I see we got one more quick question. Your financial commitment ID should be your application number, not your loan number. I just saw that come up in the sidebar for a sec.
All right.
Or the systems admin can help you out with that if you don't know what your application number is. So thanks for having me, Dan. It was great chatting with you all. Hope you found it helpful.
Yes, thank you so much.
Go get